Section 17 of Tanglewood Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Liz Devens. Tanglewood Tales by Nathaniel Hawthorne, Part 3. While the Argonauts remained on the island, they saw a small vessel approaching the shore, in which were two young men of princely demeanor, and exceedingly handsome, as young princes generally were in those days. Now, who do you imagine these two voyagers turned out to be? Why, if you will believe me, they were the sons of that very Phrixus, who, in his childhood, had been carried to Colchis on the back of the golden-fleeced ram. Since that time, Phrixus had married the king's daughter, and the two princes had been born and brought up at Colchis, and had spent their play-days in the outskirts of the grove, in the center of which the golden fleece was hanging upon a tree. They are now on their way to Greece, in hopes of getting back a kingdom that had been wrongfully taken from their father. When the princes understood whither the Argonauts were going, they offered to turn back and guide them to Colchis. At the same time, however, they spoke as if it were very doubtful whether Jason would succeed in getting the golden fleece. According to their account, the tree on which it hung was guarded by a terrible dragon, who never failed to devour, at one mouthful, every person who might venture within his reach. "There are other difficulties in the way," continued the young princess, "but is this not enough?" "Ah, brave Jason, turn back before it is too late. It would grieve us to the heart if you and your 49 brave companions should be eaten up at 50 mouthfuls by this execrable dragon." "My young friends," quietly replied Jason, "I do not wonder that you think the dragon very terrible. You have grown up from infancy in the fear of this monster, and therefore still regard him with the awe that children fear for the bugbears and hobgoblins which their nurses have talked to them about. But in my view of the matter, the dragon is merely a pretty large serpent, who is not half so likely to snap me up at one mouthful, as I am to cut off his ugly head, and strip the skin from his body. At all events, turn back who may, I will never see Greece again unless I carry with me the golden fleece." "We will none of us turn back," cried his 49 brave comrades. "Let us get on board the galley this instant, and if the dragon is to make a breakfast of us, much good may it do him." And Orpheus, whose custom it was to set everything to music, began to harp and sing most gloriously, and made every mother's son of them feel as if nothing in the world were so delectable as to fight dragons, and nothing so truly honorable as to be eaten up at one mouthful in case of the worst. After this, being now under the guidance of the two princes, who were well acquainted with the way, they quickly set sail to Colchis. When the king of the country, whose name was Aetes, heard of their arrival, he instantly summoned Jason to the court. The king was a stern and cruel-looking potentate, and though he put on a polite and hospitable expression as he could, Jason did not like his face a whit better than that of the wicked King Pelias, who dethroned his father. "You are welcome, brave Jason," said King Aetes. "Pray, are you on a pleasure voyage, or do you meditate the discovery of unknown islands? Or what other cause has procured me the happiness of seeing you at my court?" "Great sir," replied Jason, with an obeisance, for Chiron had taught him how to behave with propriety, whether to kings or beggars, "I have come hither with purpose, which I now beg your majesty's permission to execute. King Pelias, who sits on my father's throne, to which he has no more right than to the one at which your excellent majesty is now seated, has engaged to come down from it and give me his crown and scepter, provided I bring him the golden fleece. This, as your majesty is aware, is now hanging on a tree here at Colchis, and I humbly solicit your gracious leave to take it away." In spite of himself, the king's face twisted itself into an angry frown, for, above all things else in the world, he prized the golden fleece, and was even suspected of having done a very wicked act in order to get it into his own possession. It put him into the worst possible humor, therefore, to hear that the gallant Prince Jason and 49 of the bravest young warriors of Greece had come to Colchis with the sole purpose of taking away his chief treasure. "Do you know," asked King Aetes, eyeing Jason very sternly, "what are the conditions which you must fulfill before getting possession of the golden fleece?" "I have heard," rejoined the youth, "that a dragon lies beneath the tree on which the prize hangs, and that whoever approaches him runs the risk of being devoured at a mouthful." "True," said the king, with a smile that did not look particularly good-natured. "Very true, young man, but there are other things as hard, or perhaps a little harder, to be done before you can even have the privilege of being devoured by the dragon. For example, you must first tame my two brazen-footed, brazen-lunged bulls, which Vulcan, the wonderful blacksmith, made for me. There is a furnace in each of their stomachs, and they breathe such hot fire out of their mouths and nostrils that nobody has hitherto gone nigh them without being instantly burned to a small black cinder. What do you think of this, my brave Jason?" "I must encounter the peril," answered Jason composedly, "since it stands in the way of my purpose." "After taming the fiery bulls," continued King Aetes, who was determined to scare Jason if possible, "you must yoke them to a plow, and must plow the sacred earth in the grove of Mars, and sow some of the same dragon's teeth from which Cadmus raised a crop of armed men. They are an unruly set of reprobates, those sons of the dragon's teeth, and unless you treat them suitably, they will fall upon you sword in hand. You and your 49 Argonauts, my bold Jason, are hardly numerous or strong enough to fight with such a host as will spring up." "My master Chiron," replied Jason, "taught me long ago the story of Cadmus. Perhaps I can manage the quarrelsome sons of the dragon teeth as well as Cadmus did." "I wish the dragon had him," muttered King Aetes to himself, "and the four-footed Pandant, his schoolmaster, into the bargain. Why, what a foolhardy, self-conceited coxcomb he is! We'll see what my fire-breathing bulls will do for him. Well, Prince Jason," he continued aloud, and as complacently as he could, "make yourself comfortable for today, and tomorrow morning, since you insist upon it, you shall try your skill at the plow." While the king talked with Jason, a beautiful young woman was standing behind the throne. She fixed her eyes earnestly upon the youthful stranger, and listened attentively to every word that was spoken, and when Jason withdrew from the king's presence, this young woman followed him out of the room. "I am the king's daughter," she said to him, "and my name is Medea. I know a great deal of which other young princesses are ignorant, and can do many things which they would be afraid so much as to dream of. If you will trust to me, I can instruct you how to tame the fiery bulls, and sow the dragon's teeth, and get the golden fleece." "Indeed, beautiful princess," answered Jason, "if you will do me this service, I promise to be grateful to you my whole life long." Gazing at Medea, he beheld a wonderful intelligence in her face. She was one of those persons whose eyes are full of mystery, so that while looking into them, you seem to be a very great way as deep into a well, yet can never be certain whether you see into the farthest depths, or whether there be not something else hidden at the bottom. If Jason had been capable of fearing anything, he would have been very afraid of making this young princess his enemy, for beautiful as she now looked, she might, the very next instant, become as terrible as a dragon that kept watch over the golden fleece. "Princess," he exclaimed, "you seem indeed very wise and very powerful, but how can you help me, and do the things of which you speak? Are you an enchantress?" "Yes, Prince Jason," answered Medea with a smile, "you have hit upon the truth. I am an enchantress. Circe, my father's sister, taught me to be one, and I could tell you, if I pleased, who was the old woman with the peacock, the pomegranate, and the cuckoo staff whom you carried over the river, and likewise who it is that speaks through the lips of an oaken image that now stands in the prow of your galley. I am acquainted with some of your secrets, you perceive. It is well for you that I am favorably inclined, for otherwise you would hardly escape being snapped up by the dragon." "I should not so much care for the dragon," replied Jason, "if I only knew how to manage the brazen-footed and fiery-lunged bulls." "If you are as brave as I think you, and as you have to be," said Medea, "your own bold heart will teach you that there is but one way of dealing with a mad bull. What it is, I leave you to find out in the moment of peril. As for the fiery breath of these animals, I have charmed ointment here, which will prevent you from being burned up, and cure you if you chance to be a little scorched." So she put a golden box into his hand, and directed him how to apply the perfume unguent which it contained, and where to meet her at midnight. "Only be brave," added she, "and before daybreak the brazen bulls shall be tamed." The young man assured her that his heart would not fail him. He then rejoined his comrades, and told them what had passed between the princess and himself, and warned them to be in readiness in case there might be need of their help. At the appointed hour he met the beautiful Medea on the marble steps of the king's palace. She gave him a basket, in which were the dragon's teeth, just as they had been pulled out of the monster's jaws by Cadmus long ago. Medea then led Jason down the palace steps, and through the silent streets of the city, and into the royal pasture ground, where the two brazen-footed bulls were kept. It was a starry night, with a bright gleam along the eastern edge of the sky, where the moon was going to show herself. After entering the pasture, the princess paused and looked around. "There they are," she said, "reposing themselves and chewing their fiery cuds in the farthest corner of the field. It will be excellent sport, I assure you, when they catch a glimpse of your figure. My father and all his court delight in nothing so much as to see a stranger trying to yoke them in order to come at the Golden Fleece. It makes a holiday in Colchis whenever such a thing happens. For my part, I enjoy it immensely. You cannot imagine in what a mere twinkling of an eye their hot breath shrivels a young man into a black cinder." "Are you sure, beautiful Medea," asked Jason, "quite sure that the unguent in the gold box will prove a remedy against those terrible burns?" "If you doubt, if you are in the least afraid," said the princess, looking him in the face by the dim starlight, "you had better never have been born than to go a step nigher to the bulls." But Jason had his heart set steadfastly on getting the Golden Fleece, and I positively doubt whether he would have gone back without it, even had he been certain of finding himself turned into red-hot cinder, or a handful of white ashes. The instant he made a step further, he therefore let go of Medea's hand, and walked boldly forward in the direction whither she had pointed. At some distance before him he perceived 4 streams of fiery vapor, regularly appearing and again vanishing after dimly lighting up the surrounding obscurity. These, you will understand, were caused by the breath of the brazen bulls, which was quietly stealing out of their 4 nostrils as they lay chewing their cuds. At the first 2 or 3 steps which Jason made, the 4 fiery streams appeared to gush out somewhat more plentifully, for the 2 brazen bulls had heard his foot tramp, and were lifting up their hot noses to sniff the air. He went a little further, and by the way in which the red vapors now sprouted forth, he judged that the creatures had gotten upon their feet. Now he could see glowing sparks and vivid jets of flame. At the next step each of the bulls made the pasture echo with terrible roars, while the burning breath, which they thus belched forth, lit up the whole field with a momentary flash. One other stride did bold Jason make, and suddenly, as a streak of lightning, on came these fiery animals, roaring like thunder, sending out sheets of white flame, which so kindled up the scene that the young man could discern every object more distinctly than by daylight. Most distinctly of all he saw the 2 horrible creatures galloping right down upon him, their brazen hoofs rattling and ringing over the ground, and their tails sticking up stiffly in the air, as has always been the fashion with angry bulls. Their breath scorched the herbage before them, so intensely hot it was, indeed, that it caught a dry tree under which Jason was now standing, and set it all in a light blaze. But as for Jason himself, thanks to Medea's enchanted ointment, the white flame curled around his body without injuring him a jot more than if he had been made out of asbestos. End of Part 3, The Golden Fleece.